true surrender is not submission. True surrender is truly bowing down and allowing the will be done, the will of the divine. And this is hard for ego. This is hard for personality and mind, especially here in the Western Hemisphere. A lot of people associate surrender with submission, and it cannot be more contradictory to what true surrender is. True surrender is the grand empowerment of you, divine presence. Because, beloved, when you are in a state of surrender, a better word might be abandoning yourself. You are in a state of acceptance. So whatever it is that may come your way, you already have accepted. It's hard for personality and for ego, because ego is full of itself, right? It has its like and dislike. It has its self-image, its self-worth, its self-confidence. This is a question that always comes, and it just came recently by a beloved baby follower. Please don't get me wrong when I say word baby. I mean, one of you who is on the spiritual path, who comes to Devi Ma, a follower, someone very dear who came and says, how do I surrender, Ma? Why can I not surrender, Ma? And this is a question I see over and over. You cannot surrender. There is not surrendering to someone. Don't. It's not what surrender is. Abandoning yourself is a completely different vibrational experience. It's to really bow down to your own divinity within. You may call it the soul, your inner self. There are so many words which ultimately all means the same, is to bow down with dignity and reverence to the higher spirit, to what we call God by so many names, that thrive at the very core of all of us, we human beings. So that's what you do, beloved. When you surrender, abandoning yourself, you're not rendering yourself submissive to someone else's will. That would be viewed differently as submission. So that's why I'm clarifying it needs to be demystified completely, that true surrender, true abandoning yourself to the highest, to the divine within your own being is an extremely empowering process. If I look back, I have a very dear moment, very intense moment in my life where I had a very powerful mystical experience when I was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer at advanced stage 3. Some of you might know a little bit part of the story, but this moment was, I was facing the treatment, and I had decided in those days, a long time ago, that I was going to go through chemotherapy and the traditional course of treatment, 6 months of intense chemotherapy and 2 surgery and radiation, 3 months of daily radiation. And I will never forget the realization of that I might be leaving my body, that might be the end for this life, for this one, that I was facing such a huge journey in my life at that time, and I was alone. And I remember that night I made that decision, that I felt like that was a big decision to make, and I completely allowing my own divinity to take over, to make that decision. And I was cleaning my face and throwing water in my face, and I look at myself in the mirror, and then it was a deep, deep awareness, a deep surrender, a reverence to what is, what a state of complete acceptance that whatever it is, I know that my Creator knows better and will make the decision, and I trust and I go at ease with that decision. But what happened, it was energetically, and I really believe that moment was, there was a major Kundalini activation in that moment, because it became really hot. Like I was feeling a burning fire, and it was intense. And I just completely collapsed to the ground, literally, physically collapsed. And I was sobbing, and I was reaching out with intensity to God, to our Creator. And I was saying, why have you forsake me going through this? I realized that I was going to lose my hair. In those days, my hair was really long and beautiful, blonde hair, and my eyebrows and my eyelashes, and losing my nails, part of my nails, even some of the skin on my feet. It was really intense, as some of you know what I've gone through. But it was a mystical experience, because it was so zen, so existential, and it was so transcendental that I saw myself in the mirror, and all identification of ego, identification as Smita, just crumbled. That, because, you know, we associate our femininity for women is consciously and unconsciously, you associate it with your hair, with especially hair, in particularly long hair, maybe eyelashes, and I knew that everything was collapsing. There was a huge demolishing in that moment, and I crumbled to the ground. But I knew deep down, that night when I went to sleep, I put the blanket over, and I knew this was the blanket of grace. I was in complete state of bliss, of complete state of ease, of acceptance, of inner peace, and even bliss. I was really this quiet ecstasy inside, that I knew I was being taken care of. That decision was made, and I had completely abandoned myself into the hands of our Creator. And so when that kind of decision comes from that higher vibrational, from the cosmic mind, the Vishvaya Maya Kosha, you know, that etheric field, it's no longer a decision made, and it's by you, by the ego or the mind. It's a decision that comes from a different realm. And the surrender was really deep. So if you look back at your life, you can live your entire life in a state of abandoning. Because when you live like that, you getting rid, you're making a distance from ego, mind, everything that doesn't serve your highest good, that always bring you back into suffering, into misery. And that it brings such a deep sense of faith. This is where you practice your faith and your trust into your own Creator. How can you live your life without being in a stage of abandonment? And that's where you see a lot of resistance, a lot of hardship with people who are finding themselves constantly into having battle between the mind, the ego, and the heart. and they're confused and torturing themselves and mentally going through crisis, because a deep state of surrender begets a complete, because you already won the victory. So it brings such a deep sense of expansion of consciousness. It brings ease and joy and peace, because you know you've been taken care. And you know, beloved, when you allowed that to happen, you bow down with a deep reverence to your own divinity, to our Creator. You allowing that state of acceptance, and you allowing grace to flow into your life. Because you become very receptive. And when you become receptive, this is when grace comes, because it's not your will anymore. It's the will, thy will be done. Thy will be done begets tremendous expansion of surrender, begets to really discover about your true nature of who you are. And it brings you into a state of equanimity and joy and ecstasy and bliss. And that's how we need to lead our life, every moment of our life, in that state. So, beloved, don't surrender to anyone. You don't need to do that. Just abandon yourself to our Creator, to your own divine presence, and just say, I accept the will be done. And it's a process. It's a process. It's not an intellectual, how may I say that? It's not an intellectual debate. It's just, it's energetically. When you bow down, even physically bow down, and then you allowing for grace to flow. You bowing down with tremendous reverence and gratitude in your heart and your spirit and your soul. And you just offering yourself to the Divine Mother. And it is a process. So when Devi Ma says Divine Mother, is again so many words for the Creator. Divine Mother, I love calling the Divine the Mother, because that's what is so needed right now on our planet. So no need to fret, beloved. You don't need to surrender to anyone ever. Just surrender to the divine within, to your own divine presence, to the Creator, and allow the will to be done with the deep sense of acceptance that you know that is for your highest good, for your spiritual own unfoldment. Time to exercise your trust and your faith. And the more you live your life in every moment like that, the more you will trust even more the Divine Mother. You will trust and have even more faith, because you will see it's a magical way. Like Devi Ma said in the beginning, true surrender is the grand empowerment of your divine presence.